Hey there, hope you're doing well, and welcome to Ask Daniel number 13, in which we're going to go over a number of emails. No comments today, actually. It's, I think, five or so emails that we're going to look at. And as always, nothing is medical advice, just general thoughts and advice that I hope will help anyone that is tuning in and has similar type of problems as the person that is asking a question. So with that said, let's jump right in here. My energy may be a little off today. I was just before I started, preparing for this. I got a little upset with my kids. Nothing major, just a little upset, and I kind of was a little bit hard on them, maybe too hard. I don't know, but I think they deserved it. But if I'm a little off today, that's why. So anyway, let us look at this email from Eva that came in 3 days ago. And yeah, let's just start reading here. Hi, Daniel. I've been experiencing insomnia for about 6 weeks, since December 8th. I used to be a good sleeper, the sort who could nap in the afternoon, have an evening coffee, and use her mobile phone in bed right till it was time to sleep. The insomnia started with one night's bad sleep, and then a sleep worry began. I think it was because 10 years ago, I also experienced a long bout of insomnia that was associated with health concerns that lasted about 7 months. I was given medication for the insomnia, and it was when I stopped seeing the doctors and stopped the medicine, it was then that the insomnia got better and went away. But when I had that bad night's sleep, the memories of the last bout of insomnia came back. It was pretty much 10 years to the day. My doctor prescribed trazodone, which I took about 5 times. I did not like the grogginess associated with it. From January 13th, I started sleep restriction. And for those of you new to the channel, that means spending less time in bed, essentially. While I tried it, getting up every time I had not gone to sleep makes me more anxious than trying to relax in bed. I think the fact that I have to do all this simply to sleep when just 6 weeks ago I didn't bother about it at all is adversely affecting. The first 3 days went okay. I had a 6.5-hour window. So as actually Eva here points out, she was going to bed at 12:30, not before that, and get up at 7 a.m. So she spent 6.5 hours in bed, not more. That's the sleep restriction. I slept 5.5 hours, but the fourth day was a disaster, and I slept only 2.5 hours or so. I slept well on the fifth day, but because I was so tired, I slept from 12:30 a.m. to 9. I also took an hour's nap when putting my toddler to bed. The sixth night, I got a little sleep as expected. On the seventh and eighth night, I also slept badly, getting less than 4 hours. I reduced the sleep window after the first week to 6 hours, and I slept much better than the ninth and the 10th night. I slept much better the ninth and 10th night, achieving over an 85% sleep efficiency. Sleep efficiency, by the way, is the amount of time you're in bed that you're actually sleeping. So if you are spending 6 hours in bed and you sleep the opposite. You spend 7 hours in bed but sleep 6, that's about 85% sleep efficiency. Last night, the 11th, even though I was sleepy, nodding off by midnight, and sleepy at sleep window start, when I go to bed, my heart began racing and the anxious thoughts of sleep crept in. And that was that. Is this typical for there to be so many ups and downs, even during week 2 of sleep restriction? When the anxious thoughts begin, it's hard to relax. Breathing and mindful techniques don't work. In your experiences, what are the best techniques when the anxious thoughts have begun during bedtime versus to combat them? When calculating sleep efficiency to increase sleep every day for full 2 weeks, what happens when I have a bad night or two? I simply want to get over all this and not be meditating, breathing, and sleep restriction. I would greatly appreciate any tips and advice. So Eva, I want to say, first of all, thanks for reaching out. I do have things that I think will be really helpful to you and anyone else in the same spot. And let's go over this. There was a lot of things I wanted to share here. And first of all, actually, you had trouble sleeping 10 years ago. Sounds like a really significant bout of insomnia. And it's not at all unusual to have a little bit of like PTSD. You know, even if it's so long ago, you still have that memory of how bad things were. And you may not have thought about it for years, but then when you have that one night when you're not sleeping well, you know, that triggers the fear of going back to that insomnia pattern you had, and that triggers it again. So my point here is that for anyone that's had a real bout of insomnia, things are a little bit different, meaning somebody who's never had trouble sleeping, they go through a sleepless night, they may just shrug and that was weird, and they don't think much about it, and then they go back to sleeping well. once you've had insomnia, you might have a stronger reaction to a sleepless night. And my point here is that it's completely normal and expected. So for anybody out there that's kind of are at the point where you no longer have trouble sleeping, know that your reaction to sleepless night may be stronger, but then you have to try even harder not to kind of react to the reaction in a way. Meaning, for somebody that's never had any trouble sleeping, something stressful happens, they don't sleep for one night. If you had trouble sleeping, if you had insomnia, that might be 2 nights for you, 3 nights. But the basic thing still applies, like try not to react to it, try not to make changes and things like that when you have that initial kind of triggered sleepless night. Now, going back to Eva here, I'm not saying that you should just not do anything at this point, but that was just kind of some thoughts to share for anybody that's had insomnia in the past and be doing better now. So it's not surprising that with a strong reaction, and now I think it is a good idea to spend less time in bed. For anyone that has trouble sleeping, it is a good idea. Maybe with the exception of somebody who has very fleeting, just a day or two of trouble sleeping, then maybe you should just ignore it. But for anybody that has like more than that, I think spend less time in bed now is a good idea. Now let's get practical here. So Eva, you write here that while I tried sleep restriction, getting up every time I've not gone to sleep makes me more anxious than trying to relax in bed. So what a lot of people do is kind of using using this thing called stimulus control. Often you hear that if you're not able to sleep in bed, then just get out. And a lot of people use kind of a time thing and say like, okay, if I haven't gone to bed in 15 minutes, I'm going to get out of bed, which can definitely defeat the purpose of trying to sleep better, because you can be clock watching, you can be self-monitoring, like how long have I been in bed? Should I get up? Should I not stay in bed? Etc. So I think that the reflective, like just get up out of bed immediately if you can't sleep, is not helpful. It's also not helpful, I believe, to check the time and be like, if it's 15 minutes, I'm going to get out of bed. I think a better approach is this one. If you are in bed, either if you're that initial time you go to bed or you woke up from sleep and you're in bed, and you find that you're not sure if you're going to sleep again or not, then I think you can just kind of gauge how you're feeling. Like try to take a mental journey. Try to imagine something pleasant, the proverbial beach in Hawaii, like something really nice. And if that comes easy to you, then you can just lay there and still think about something nice. If that doesn't happen, if you're not like distractible, if you can't stop thinking about the fact that you're in bed and not sleeping, then maybe read a book in bed. Totally fine. Read a book in bed, and if you feel that distracts you, you feel comfortable now, you're enjoying your book, good, you can stay in bed too. If none of that works, if you're like, no matter what you do, you're just frustrated, you can't stop thinking about sleep, leave the bed and do something that is enjoyable, that you like to do. Listen to podcasts that's interesting, read a book that you like. It never works if you're trying to do something boring to put you back to sleep. That's a sleep effort, doesn't work. And by the way, Noon Smith, I saw a comment here. I'm going to get to it in a second here. So back to Eva, that was kind of, I think, an important point about like not just jumping out of bed as soon as you can't feel like you can't sleep. I think the fact that I have to do all this simply sleep when I just 6 weeks I didn't bother is adversely affecting me. Here's the thing, you probably know this at some level, but when somebody sleeps great, they do that because they don't do anything. People sleep great because they're not trying anything. They don't have a thought about sleep in their mind. And when people say I have to do all this to sleep, that makes me a little bit worried, because people sometimes get the belief that they have to, for example, they have to take some melatonin, they have to have their hot tea, they have to do this all these things to sleep, which is not true if you start examining the beliefs. So the goal is actually not to do anything, but sometimes to get to that goal, you have to do something, which is spending less time in bed. I hope that made sense. And kind of what I want to come across here is that with you, Eva, or anybody else, 6 weeks ago, you were the same person as now. You're breathing the same air. You're on the same planet. Your brain is the same. There's nothing different with you. The only thing is that you're preoccupied with sleep. That is it. Okay. I hope that helps. And as we move forward here. Now, here's, I think, maybe the most important thing to say here, because the question here is, Is it typical for there to be so many ups and downs, even during the second week of spending less time in bed, sleep restriction? Completely normal and expected. I want, in the app that I've created that is not up there and at this point, it'll soon be up there anymore. I make a specific point of talking about how the first stage, which typically lasts about 2 weeks or so, can be longer, but the first 2 weeks I call the yo-yo stage, because this yo-yoing all the time, yo-yo or bumpy ride, but I like the yo-yo stage. It is typical. And why does that happen? Well, for many reasons, but mainly it's because, you're still self-monitoring. You're still kind of checking how things are working. And sometimes you start really wondering, like, is this going to help me? Is this not going to help? And then you have insomnia, you have trouble sleeping. And then you go through a day when you are really sleep deprived, and then you sleep better the next day. And then the whole kind of cycle repeats itself. But the important point here is that if you just keep going, if you don't react to it, then things start getting better. Usually week 3, week 4, things kind of start settling in. And that brings me to another important point here. You mentioned how you started with a 6.5-hour sleep window, and then you put it down to 6, and you're calculating your sleep efficiency. I understand all of this. I understand why you're doing it, but I believe the best thing to do is just keep going. Like, meaning you choose a sleep window, 6.5 hours, 6 hours, or 7 hours. Doesn't really matter that much, in my opinion, how wide you make that. The more important thing is just to keep going, not question it. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. Because what happens is when you start tweaking things, then you're like, okay, I'm going to do a wider sleep window. Let's see how that works. It worked great. No, it didn't work. Now I have to change it again. You're chasing your own tail. So I think the best thing is just keep going. I've come to believe that, and I know, by the way, in my earlier videos I talk about sleep efficiency, how to calculate, etc. I've come to believe that that's not important at all. Important thing is to have a sleep window, not question it, move forward. And when you start feeling that your sleep confidence is growing, when you start feeling like, okay, I'm not so worried about my sleep anymore, I can sleep, there's nothing wrong with me, then you can relax the bedtime, you can go bed earlier, and then etc. And then finally, when you have full sleep confidence, you can do whatever you want. So that was kind of number 1 here. Number 2, the anxious thoughts. Breathing, mindfulness techniques do not work. What's the best technique for anxious thoughts? I believe this, that it's not any surprise that these things don't work. And the reason is that anxiety cannot be like kind of attacked head on, meaning there's nothing you can do with the direct goal of reducing anxiety that will work. Because when you do, let's say, meditation, you're like, I'm anxious, I'm going to meditate so I become less anxious. Then you're going to be meditating and thinking like, am I less anxious? No, I'm more anxious. I'm going to become less anxious. No, this isn't working. I have to meditate more, so that become self-monitoring. I believe the best strategy for like anxiety like that, close to bedtime or whatnot, is shifting attention, doing something that is actually enjoyable. Not reading a boring book to make yourself sleep, reading a good book that you enjoy. And you may think like, oh my gosh, then I'm going to lose even more sleep because I become more alert. No. When you something, you distract yourself, you allow your body to sleep. There's not that anxiety blocking it. So I think that is really the best thing to do. Now, that said, I have some, sorry, I'm live here and I'm having this, somebody is kind of spamming me here. How can I remove all this? I can't, I don't know. I just put the person on timeout, whatever that means. All right. Now, Noon Smith live here said, I just want to say I used to only be able to sleep for 2 hours, and I know it's not great, but I sleep for 5 to 6 hours. So I think that sounds like Noon Smith is sleeping a little bit more, which is good. Very happy to hear that. Anybody else has a question, then please chime in. And we do have more questions here, which is from Vince. Hi Dan, it's me, Vince. I have been following my sleep window for about 3 weeks, but you told me not to count days and let it go. True. When I sleep, I feel like I'm half awake, half asleep, but I still have problems initiating sleep. Should I sleep much later at the start of my sleep window, or do you have any advice? I think, my kind of general thinking here is just the same thing I just said in this video. Is like, move ahead. Don't question it. Don't wonder. Don't try to tweak things. Just like keep going. And you said when I fall asleep, I feel like I'm half asleep, half awake. Well, half awake. That's very common with hyperarousal. The hyperarousal is like kind of when your mind is like constantly kind of monitoring. You're very awake. You are very aware of what's happening, and that can very often lead you to feel like I'm not fully asleep. I'm kind of like half asleep, half awake. As long as if you're not falling asleep during the day, that means you're getting enough sleep. If you're falling asleep during the day, then you should not do that. And so I think the best thing to do is, like, again, not question, just move forward, keep going. Every little positive, just hold on to it, just play it up. That, I think that's really the best thing to do. I think it's just keep going, keep going, keep going. And so, Vince, hang in there. I don't know how you feel, but just from judging from like the type of questions you ask me, I feel like you're making a lot of progress. Okay, so that said, let's move on to another email here, which was here. I think this is a follow-up one. Yes, it is. It's a follow-up one from Megan, who emailed 13 days ago, had some questions about sleep and the immune system, led to some interesting conversation on the channel. Let's read the email. Hi again. Thank you so much for your video response to my question. I have some more thoughts I'd like to share. First, I've heard several people ask about activities they could do while awake at night. I wanted to suggest to your viewers coloring in adult coloring books. I find it very relaxing, and it doesn't involve looking at screens. I like to listen to podcasts or sermons while coloring. It was actually while listening to a sermon that I heard the information I referenced in my previous email about low amounts of sleep affecting your immune system. Okay, and there's some links here that I have not checked out. And but I have heard other people say coloring helps. Somebody made like a whole doodle pad and things like that. Whatever you enjoy, I think is great. And again, I do believe that looking at screens has the potential negative of, you see the time. That is, in my opinion, can be really disruptive. I don't think screens themselves are a problem. But anyway, now let's see. I know focusing on things like this just feeds the insomnia. That's why I made a point to write. I accidentally heard it. I wasn't seeking it out. Okay, totally get it. All right. But I did want you to know that the research was out there. Okay. Second, I again want to thank you for transforming the way I think about sleep. For the past few months, I really believed I couldn't sleep without medication. I would always try to sleep without it on weekends, but no matter how tired and relaxed I was, it just seemed like I was missing a key ingredient to flip the switch from being awake to sleep. So after an hour or two in bed, I would give in and pop a pill. Your statement in the video that the medicine wasn't producing sleep, that had been producing sleep all along, was very encouraging to me. Other new ideas and helpful ideas for me were that my body naturally knows how to sleep and wants to sleep, and that insomnia is actually an anxiety disorder. Super true. I had been to several medical doctors for insomnia, and I have had many blood tests with no real answers. But I have great news. Okay, let's get ready for it. Last weekend, I slept great for 2 nights without medication. That is awesome. That is super, super good. And last night, I also slept great without meds. I'm writing this on a Saturday night, so I will see how it goes tonight as well. It is 11:30 right now, and normally I would, because the clock says I should. Ironically, right after I wrote this, my husband walked in and said, "What are you doing up? It's past your bedtime." I'm thinking about, as a first step, continuing to take Lunesta during the work week for a while, but not during weekends, in order to build my sleep confidence. What do you think about this idea? Okay, firstly, I'm super glad about hearing all these insights. Yes, the body can regulate sleep. All sleep is natural. Super true. You slept great without medications. That is awesome. That should build your sleep confidence. Now, a couple of things. Now, I think the most important thing that I want to point out here is whenever we self-monitor, there's a great risk that we won't sleep well. So when somebody decides, and you know this because, like, as you describe in this email, like, there have been so many times where you kind of were like, you tried not to take the medication and kind of, let's see how it goes, and then you ended up like kind of like thinking, kind of self-monitoring, like, let's see if I can sleep, let's see if I can't sleep, etc. And then you end up taking it, and then it kind of feeds the notion that you can't sleep without it, etc. So when somebody says, I'm going to try to see what happens when I take it during this time and not taking it during that time, I think there's always the risk that when you're trying to see if you can sleep without it, it might backfire just because you're trying to see what's going to happen. So, um, so my general thought is that when it comes to medications is the worst thing to do, in my opinion, the worst thing to do is going to bed to see if you can sleep without it that particular night. Go to bed and say, like, okay, I'm going to see if I can sleep without it tonight. That almost always backfires. I think if you have an approach of like, I am going to take it every day during the week, and I'm not going to take it during the weekend for the next, month or something like that, that could work. That could totally work. The key again is like not to, when you go to bed, not having already decided well before going to bed if you're going to take it or not. I think that works. And if you embark on what you're thinking here, let's say I'm committed to taking it every day during the week, and I'm not going to take it during the weekend, that could very well start building your confidence, and then you can decide not to take it during the week as well. That could work. Generally, my thinking about medications is that my general thought about it is that it may be easiest to do the thing where you decide to take it all the time or none of the time, and then come off of it when your sleep confidence is grown. Maybe easier, but I think what you're thinking may very well work. And I think most importantly here, actually, the most important thing is you have seen great things. That is great in itself. You're sharing it here. That is also great because that affirms that great things are happening. And I want to say there will be times when you have a sleepless night again, guaranteed. When that happens, it's always tempting, or you may go to that, oh no, I can't sleep without medication. I have to go back on it. What should I do? That reaction you can't really avoid the reaction, but it's always good to try to resist the urge to start tweaking things, backtracking, going back, changing things. The best thing is always to like, I've made this decision, I'm going to do this, and then stick to it. I think that's the best thing. So I hope this helped, Megan, and overall, super glad to hear things are getting better. That is awesome. Really, really awesome. All right, so let's move ahead to another question here. This was Megan. Yeah, so this is Samuel now, who is back in touch. Let's read what Samuel has happening here. Hi, Daniel. This is Samuel again. I emailed a few weeks ago with a question about how I was afraid of hallucination from lack of sleep. I feel really frustrated now, and I really just need to talk about it. I couldn't sleep at all last night. This was the first truly sleepless night in a little while, which is a good thing. Yes, absolutely. Also, the past couple of weeks, for the most part, I've been sleeping well with only the occasional poor night of sleep. So that's also a good thing. As you can see, I'm trying my best to be positive, but I just can't help feeling frustrated. Absolutely. And I think, Samuel's bringing up some really good points here. I'm going to take a little break here, which is when, myself and anybody else that deals a lot with insomnia, you see this all the time, that somebody have well, and then this one sleepless night, and then that sleepless night gets all the attention. Why did this happen? What can I do differently? When we should focus on the other stretch. We should get the other stretch when you're doing pretty well, all the attention, like play it up, talk to friends, say I can't sleep, etc. And I think Samuel knows this, but for everyone else, I wanted to point that out. I feel like as soon as my head hits the pillow, even on the good nights, I start experiencing the following thoughts: irrational OCD-like thoughts. A common one is that my sleeping mask is upside down or crooked, so I have to keep feeling adjusting it. Another thought would that I don't have enough sheets on my side, so I keep checking it. Number 2, fear of not being able to sleep can get worse on Sundays because I know I have to drive to work the next morning. Number 3, a moderate fear of falling asleep. Yes, sometimes I fear that because I don't want to become unconscious for 7 or 8 hours. I think it's just general fear of unconsciousness. It's not like I'm afraid I might die or something like that. It's more like the lack of control, ? This all started just before my father passed away last year. I was so stressed I couldn't sleep for a couple of days. And ever since then, I've been struggling on and off with problems falling asleep. Before then, I had lots of sleep confidence. I was great at falling asleep. I had a technique where I could stop my thoughts and sleep would just come naturally. Nowadays, this doesn't seem to work anymore. Now I go back and forth between using meditation to help me fall asleep and doing nothing, depending on what works. I've tried paradoxical intention. That's when you go to bed and like try to stay awake. However, because of my hyperarousal, due to my anxious thought, this doesn't seem to help. Daydreaming sometimes might help because it's a bit, but sometimes is nice, but doesn't help much either because it's a bit too active for my brain. I'm assuming my problem is that I'm trying too hard to fall asleep. But to be honest, it's really hard not to. My questions are, number one, how can I get to the point where the above thoughts no longer plague me when it's bedtime? Two, I use stimulus control. In other words, I get out of bed and do something else in the other room for 20 minutes if I can't fall asleep. I've heard you say that if you're comfortable and relaxed, then it's okay to stay in bed. But if I stay in bed, even if I'm relaxed and I don't fall asleep, won't that condition me to associate the bed with being awake? Finally, I'm in the bed for 9 hours every night. I'm wondering if bedtime restriction would benefit me, but I'm really afraid of the added sleep pressure that will be introduced once I cut my time in bed. Sorry for the lengthy email, no problem. Just frustrated, trying to stay positive. I'm really considering possibly taking SSRI medication from anxiety like I used to. Okay, Samuel, a couple of things here. I want to kind of double down on the first thing here, which was um, I haven't had a truly you haven't had a truly sleepless night in a while. The couple of past weeks, for the most, I've been sleeping pretty well, which is, again, I know you're doing this already, but even just play that up, like, let that grow your sleep confidence. Like, that is really good. Now, I want to say the following, that when it comes to all this kind of like sleep anxiety, irrational thoughts, fear of not being able to sleep, I think the best, like, again, like, this kind of an extra disclaimer here, always talk to your doctor if you're afraid of your health and things like that. Think about medications, of course, talk to your doctor. But the general thing with sleep anxiety is that I feel the best thing for sleep anxiety is to sleep, is sleeping better, to see that you fall asleep pretty quickly, you sleep through the night, there's nothing wrong with you. That is what ultimately is the cure for sleep anxiety. And how do you get there? Well, I believe that, let's go over the gas and brake really quickly here. Sleep drive is when your body's want to sleep, this hunger for sleep, right? That can only be produced by wakefulness. Only wakefulness can make you need sleep. And then you have the anxiety, that is the brake, the anxiety, the stress, the excitement, the preoccupation, and all that. And most people kind of want to tackle the anxiety. Like, how can I become less anxious? How can I stop thinking? How can I just, which is difficult to do. It is much more doable to actually increase that sleep drive, make yourself a little bit more sleepy so it overrides the brake. And guess what? When you start overriding the brake, when you're starting to fall asleep, stay asleep, etc., then the brake goes away because you're now believing in yourself again. So, which then goes to, I'm in bed for 9 hours per night. I think honestly, my opinion is that for really everyone that has trouble sleeping, spending less time in bed is the key. It is the key, because when you get up early every day, you go to bed, maybe let's say spend 7 hours in bed, just for example. When you go to bed, you are more sleepy, you have more sleep drive, you fall asleep quicker. Maybe it'll take like a couple weeks, but when that kicks in, I think that's the best thing for sleep anxiety. And so that's the one thing I want to say. And then the other one is the stimulus control part. If I stay in bed while I'm relaxed and don't fall asleep, won't that condition me to associate the bed with being awake? I personally, there are people that think that, but I don't think so. I think problem is frustration in bed. I think if you're awake in bed but you're enjoying it and you look forward to going to bed because you're going to do something enjoyable, I don't think that will cause any problems with sleep. I don't believe that at all. And so I think, overall, Samuel, I think super happy about this first paragraph where you had so much insight, and keep going, and let us know how things go. Things go, and you can definitely you'll get past this, I'm sure. Okay, Samuel. Okay, now quick one here from Linda. I just want to, I'm just actually going to share kind of a synopsis here. And so Linda, who had asked us about like this, when you're falling asleep, you get this sudden awareness. She's doing really, really well, really well. And there's a success story here. We're going to see like basically by like not, she says that, what did she say here? I felt like I had trouble. So she listened to Alex talking insomnia number 16. And she said, I listened to the advice you gave him, and seriously, I can't put into words how much of a difference that has made. And basically what I said was like, don't try to control it or do something actively to stop it. And that's been, so tomorrow I'm going to post like a success story about that. Linda, thanks so much. Thank you really, really much for that. And okay, so we have a live question here from Produceman 13. I still have to pee every few hours. Could this be a prostate problem? You say it can be anxiety, or could it also be just another thing for me to monitor in my subconscious? I do have depression even when I do sleep, so it's great advice to try to do something that we enjoy every day. How do you get into whale watching? All right, so for a little bit of background there, I've talked about this on this channel. I made a blog post about it too, where I said the cure for insomnia is whale watching, and I just chose whale watching because it's kind of like a little bit out there. It gets like, whale watching, why would that be the cure for insomnia? It's something new, something different, something that takes your mind in a different direction. That's why, I don't know why whale watching came to, actually it's because I live here in Oregon. We can do whale watching on the coast, but I've never done it, so it's something on my mind, I guess. Now, pee every few hours, again, talk to your doctor whenever you're concerned about your health. But I want to say this again, that I've had one person, I believe, on the channel here that said that when she had really active insomnia, she used to pee like every 15 minutes, something crazy like that, which didn't happen during the day. When she slept better, didn't happen anymore. So somehow I believe, based on that, and I've seen a patient in clinic too that was like, it's weird, I have all this insomnia and I have to pee all the time. Somehow I believe that, having to pee all the time can be some type of a hyperarousal symptom. But that's pretty much my thoughts on that. And by the way, I've thought about making an episode on that to see if other people then share like, yeah, that's happened to me too, and we may get some clarity on that one. But yeah, Produceman, I'm happy you're doing something you enjoy every day. Sounds like you're doing that, and stay in touch. Okay, that was Linda, and now we have, I think, 2 more emails here to talk about. Oh yeah, this is another person that is checking back in, which is Patrick, and he wrote this 12 hours ago. Hello again, Daniel. Thanks for your help. Just implemented a strict sleep window again and trying to get back on track to good sleep. My concern is I've had pretty relentless insomnia for 10 months now. In that time, I've lost jobs, been to many doctors, and only really had a 2-week break of somewhat regular sleep. My family has been telling me to go back to the doctors and how rare and severe my case is. My question to you is it common for those with chronic insomnia to have such unrelenting sleeplessness for this long? Their concerns are only increasing my anxiety, and that all my questions. I get this question every now and then. It's basically, the question is like, is this kind of normal? Like, is this chronic insomnia? Can it really be this bad? And I think this third time using a disclaimer here is like, whenever you're concerned about your health, you have to see a doctor, of course. That said, chronic insomnia can be extreme. Like, as you probably hear on this channel, it can be people feeling like they sleep like 2 hours a night for like years on end. It can cause like this fogginess, out of body sensation, tingling, jerks, and like chronic insomnia can be really, really bad. Absolutely, it can be really bad. And I think for most people, like, one thing doesn't have to exclude the other. You could spend less time in bed and be strict with that, and talk to your doctors, of course. But I guess my short answer is like chronic insomnia can definitely cause unrelenting sleeplessness. No question about it. No question about it. But yeah, Patrick, hang in there. Any other questions? Stay in touch. Please stay in touch. And then we have, which we'll see if there's any other live questions. Otherwise, this will be the last one. This is from Rob, who me and Martin Reed talked about an email from Rob in the past. Now, here's a question. Let's say you're around 6 weeks or so into CBTi, and you're due to take an overseas trip with some serious time zone hopping. How should you incorporate that into CBTi practice? Or is it worth suspending sleep scheduling until you return? Good question. And I think we had a similar one in the past, but I am guessing, because I think Rob is like in week 3 or 4, I'm guessing Rob has a trip coming up here. And here are my thoughts. Generally speaking, when somebody says they have a trip, I get really excited. I get really excited because the best thing for insomnia is not thinking about sleep. And oftentimes when people travel, maybe not the shorter trip, but if it's a longer trip, that's like something you look forward to, something fun, that can really throw off your preoccupation, your anxiety. You're kind of like in a new environment, everything is new. You don't think so much about sleep. That can really, really help. So I think if it is a trip you're looking forward to, there's nothing particularly triggering about the trip, then and it's maybe shorter trip, maybe a few days, then I think the best thing is probably to like take a break from the whole CBTi thing, just enjoy, just have fun, see what happens. If it is maybe a trip that you have a little bit sleep anxiety towards it, it's not necessarily something you're going to enjoy, then probably the best thing to do is to have some, kind of keep your sleep window. And how do you do that? I think the best thing to do is just wherever you are in the new time zone, pick your wake up time, probably the same time you have at home, pick the wake up time, go to bed, whatever it is, 6 hours before that or 7 hours before that, not, keep the sleep window, probably a good idea. So, hope this helped, Rob, and stay in touch. Great question again. And with that said, I think we answered all the questions. Nothing else from anybody else, I think. And yeah, well, that's it. And by the way, I want to share that on Thursday, I'm again having a guest on that will answer questions together with me, and it's going to be Nick Wignall, psychologist, writer, really smart guy. So can't wait. It's going to be really good. So with that said, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll be back with that success story tomorrow, and I'll be back answering questions on Thursday. Bye-bye.